If you've ever asked why some crops took and others didn't, you might get an answer that didn't sound like an answer at all. Something like, well, you planted that in the wrong part of the moon. And that would be all they would say. The fog is starting to settle in, so come on over. Sit with me a while on the porch and be still a moment and notice the things the mountains don't say out loud. You're listening to Where the Fog Settles. In the mountains, people didn't always explain things outright. They would tell you just enough to make you notice. And if you paid attention long enough, you'd start to see it. That the moon wasn't just something you looked at. It was something that moved things. Not fast, not in a way you could point to all at once, but steady. They believed that the same pull that moves the tides also moves the water in the soil and the life inside a seed. So planting wasn't just about where you put something, it was about when. Because there were times when things seemed to rise and times when they settled back down. And if you worked with that, things had a way of taking hold. They didn't call it waxing or waning, not in those words, but they knew the difference. When the moon was growing from dark towards full, it was time for things that grew above ground. Beans, corn, tomatoes, anything you wanted to rise, because they said, the pool is going up. And when the moon started to fade from full back into dark, that was the time for what grew beneath: potatoes, carrots, onions, because that same pool was settling back down into the earth. Some folks kept track of it in almanacs, marking out the days they believed were best for planting one thing and not the other. Days for above ground crops when the moon was increasing, and the days for root crops when it was fading. Not exact for everyone, but close enough that people paid attention. You could plant the same seed in the same soil, just a few days apart, and get two different outcomes. And that's what people noticed. That's what made them trust it. Not theory, but results. And it didn't stop with crops. They used the moon for other things too. Pruning. They said if you cut something back when the moon was growing, it would come back stronger. But if you wanted to slow something down, you waited until the moon was fading. Even fishing. Some swore the best days came around the new moon and the full, when the pull was the strongest. There's a kind of patience that comes living close to the land, a willingness to wait, even when everything looks ready. because sometimes what you can see only is part of what's happening. And maybe that's why they understood that growth doesn't just depend on effort. It depends on timing. And timing has a rhythm of its own. But even that wasn't the whole of it, because there were days, even in the right part of the moon, when they still wouldn't plant. There were days they would look out over the same ground and say, "Not today," because the moon might be right, but the signs, they were not. And that's where it starts to shift, from something you can watch to something you had to learn by living it. Until the mountains speak again, walk gently and listen for what lingers where the fog settles. And if you're planning to put your hands in the dirt this weekend, there's one more thing you need to know.